Welcome to All Angles, a college admissions podcast by Comet, the podcast that helps you crack the code to college admissions and make informed decisions about your future. With our unique approach of exploring all angles, we delve deep into the complex and multifaceted world of college. Our show features expert advice, real-world collegiate experiences, and valuable tips and strategies to help you not only get into the college of your choice, but also succeed academically, socially, and professionally. Join us for straight talk interviews with admissions experts, hiring managers, and discussions with college students on a wide range of topics related to their academic and social experiences. On today's episode, we'll be discussing the Supreme Court's recent decision to end affirmative action in college admissions. But first, I'd like to introduce both of our guests today, Elton and Amulya. So, Elton, would you like to go ahead and share a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Shania. Appreciate it. Excited to jump on the call today to discuss a very important milestone or marker in the history of college admissions. So, real quickly, my name is Elton Lin. I'm the CEO and founder of Comet, and also the CEO and founder of Illumin Education, which is a private college counseling firm. Have been doing college counseling for the better part of 12 years, have helped students gain admission into every top 50 university, including every Ivy League. So I've seen tons of student profiles and understand the process well. And we also have former admission officers from the top 20 universities on our advisory team for Comet. So I'm excited to discuss today and excited to have Amulya on as well.
Hi, I'm Amulya. I'm a senior in high school, and I live in Bay Area in California. And I'm excited to talk about this topic and get some insights on the details regarding the Supreme Court case.
Hey, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing about yourself. We're excited to have you on here as well. I'm sure our viewers are too, because it's always just Elton and I having conversations. So, first, especially even for people that do kind of have an understanding of affirmative action, Elton, I'd love if you kind of just explain like what it really is and what that Supreme Court decision was with regard to affirmative action.
Well, affirmative action broadly, its application is different from state to state, but generally speaking, the concept of affirmative action is that a higher education entity can consider race in their admission process. How exactly that is, like how many of a particular racial group or whether it's even how many or percentage, that's entirely left up to each individual state or governing entity. But the essence of affirmative action is that race can and should be included in the admissions process.
Yeah, and so what really was the Supreme Court decision and how does that really impact students that are applying to college?
Yeah, the Supreme Court decision is basically saying that it is unlawful for colleges to take race into consideration as a factor of admissions. So, like, there are certainly many factors, academic profile, sports, legacy, which is a sensitive topic that this decision does sort of lay some groundwork against also legacy admissions, which is another conversation we can probably have as well. But they are saying specifically that race, among the many factors, cannot be included among the factors for admission.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So I'd like to understand, and I'm sure we can get to Amelia's questions after as well. I'm sure she has a lot of as someone who's applying to college, but how does the removal of affirmative action impact underrepresented groups? So how would that really, change what their future looks like in college, if at all?
Yeah, it provides so it depends on the school, right? So there isn't, there's only so much visibility that we have into how each school uses affirmative action. And as it relates to private colleges, there is a lot of material that has been drawn from how Harvard uses just different factors in their admissions process. But that hasn't been done for like Princeton or other private schools. So it's hard to be very ultra specific, but generally speaking, affirmative action allows schools to provide a very direct pathway. So if you are from an underrepresented ethnic group or racial group, And many would say that it historically benefits Black and Latino students the most. And perhaps they are the students who are most underrepresented, and colleges are creating pathways using affirmative action for these students to have a place at their higher institutions. So historically, what it means is that there is that direct pathway, or that direct adjustment in the admissions process will limit Black and Latino students' access to the most selective institutions. And I think that that's really kind of going to be perceived as the biggest factor in the removal of affirmative action.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And Amulya, I'd love if you wanted to kind of chime in and ask any questions that you had about maybe how college admission process and diversity can change on campus. I know you were mentioning that earlier.
Yeah, so I was wondering, like, what aspects of the college application could possibly become more or less important because of this change in the system?
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard to say. So I think, but we're still kind of early in this process, and colleges are figuring out how to make their adjustments to still try to make diversity. Every school has come, I mean, most of the schools that are affected, I mean, especially Harvard, has come on and said, even in light of the Supreme Court decision, we are going to do everything in our power to try to still diversify the student community as much as we can. And so they even identified a loophole in the Supreme Court decision, saying that students can include race in their responses to either supplement essays or their personal statement. And in so doing, if the student brings up race, then the college will consider it. And Harvard even like highlighted that sentence in their public response, saying that sending out the beacon call to students. Though I, to be frank with you, wouldn't tell students to just strong arm race into their essay somewhere. It should still be a natural delivery of what that is as a part of their story. However, Harvard basically said, "Hey, students, pay attention to this line." And now, Muli, I totally forgot your question.
I was just wondering, like, what aspects of the college application would become more or less important?
Yeah, well, on that note, I think what potentially could be more important is the essay, as essay or any kind of short answer question. And this is where I think especially for Black and Latino students who, and let me maybe even sub-isolate that, any student who is from a lower income bracket, I think more and more more and more universities will begin to maybe use that as an opportunity to focus their attention on students who are coming from underrepresented groups. And I do believe if there is somewhat of a silver lining in this process, I think it helps universities to focus on students who are coming from more lower income backgrounds. And in my opinion, I do think that, I mean, that's a good move to really make sure that students who are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds are given every opportunity to access the most selective universities. And this also may mean like students from ethnic backgrounds that are not underrepresented, but coming from lower income communities. To me, that's in some sense a plus. But this is indeed impactful historically on Black and Latino students, and that have removing that direct pathway for them is significant. That's for sure. But the essay part, as it relates to how students are communicating their ethnic background and its impact on their story, and also other places where students can signal and make clear and honest signals to colleges about their financial background, whether they're first gen or they're coming from maybe lower income communities or a lower income background. Those are the places that are going to be more important on the college app as it relates to what students are filling out.
Yeah, and so I know you kind of mentioned like, Harvard was trying to find a loophole of the system. They probably had all of Harvard law kind of congregate together in the building. Like, this is what this is the day we've been preparing for. Like, this is when we put the law to use. But I mean, obviously, understandably, it would be hard for every college to follow that loophole, or even like students if they don't happen to bring up their race, or maybe their circumstances within their essays or anything. It can be hard for the application readers to know. And so how do you envision that removing affirmative action will actually impact like campus diversity? Like, can we be bold enough to say like it won't make a difference? It'll make such a big difference. Like it's going to change the trajectory of diversity in college. Like, what do you really think about how it'll impact?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I want to make one particular note is that the UC system has not had affirmative action since 1996. So I just want to, I think oftentimes people kind of forget that that is the current state of the University of California. California's voted in 96 to also remove affirmative action. As perhaps left leaning as California might be, we had already, as a state, already voted against it. So it's possible that both of you were not born in 96. It's
Yeah.
possible that I was born prior to 96. So and the UC system is, as of today, more diverse than they were in the 96. And so the UC system has found ways to reach the goals that they want to reach. And just so you know, maybe as a background on the UC system, especially because Amulya, you are in California. But yeah, there is actually that part of like name and race is blocked out on the initial reader's review of a University of California application. So your name and your racial background is like blank. So there's nothing for them to connect a particular student to a particular ethnic background. So they've been making those decisions. What they've been doing is that they've been focusing on high schools that tend to have more students from underrepresented backgrounds. So the UC system, I feel like, has really done a great job to provide equal access to all high schools from California. They, as it relates to out-of-state students, this is kind of a little bit of a different question, but as it relates to, like, say, your in-state public university, if you're living in Texas and you're looking at the University of Texas system, UT Austin is amazing and fantastic, and you want to get in, and you're worried that affirmative action, many universities I think are going to follow the UC system, which is focusing on high schools that have more underrepresented students, tailoring outreach programs to try to reach those students. So you're going to have admission counselors who are going to be going out to particular schools and trying to make sure that more students from that school will come. And likely there's going to be increased opportunities and programs for financial aid. And so in order to try to attract a particular student from an underrepresented group, they're going to target financial aid and scholarship opportunities towards those students in order to increase the number of applicants coming from that direction. So that's what I think will happen. And in many respects, that's what the UC has done as well. And what I think many universities in the United States will follow after the model of.
Yeah, thank you. That was definitely very insightful. And I'm glad to hear, though, that, their colleges will focus on, underrepresented, high schools, and just kind of like figuring out how to outreach and still, support students the best they can. Amulya, did you have any questions that you wanted to personally ask, maybe, especially as someone who's applying to college, about how this can impact you?
I was wondering about how people can tailor their essays in a way that would make them like unique applicants to colleges, especially after like this huge change in how essays are probably going to become more important, as you mentioned.
Let's I don't mean to kind of push or sway this conversation in a particular direction, but let me, if I may, Amulya, ask you, would you mind sharing, maybe before we get into that, share, what's your own personal sort of response to affirmative action when you heard of the decision? What are some of the things you felt? How did you think things were going to impact you?
When I first heard about this decision, I feel like I didn't know for sure how to respond because I didn't have all the details. So it definitely took a little bit of like research, and I just recently have been thinking about like how it would affect like this year, just because like this is the first year that this decision has been made. So in the fall, like when me and my class applies, there are a lot of things that are going to be changing around. So a lot of unexpected decisions may come. So I was thinking about like which aspects would probably be more important and what would make me a unique applicant. I also was thinking about how like what other ways that they could implement some sort of way to make this all like equitable. So I think definitely I've just been kind of trying to like think about how this would affect me and how it would affect my class in general.
Got it. And Amelia, do you mind if I ask, like, what is your ethnic background specifically?
I'm South Asian.
Got it. So I only bring that up because I feel like it has everybody from a different ethnic background has a particular opinion on where this all stands, and I think it's a little bit early with regards to us knowing very clearly how universities are going to manage this process. So I think everybody's thinking through it, and I'll tell you right now, colleges are like slow as molasses when it comes to adjusting policy, but if I may say that I think it brings up a lot of like different responses. I think there is a for historically underrepresented students, I think it feels like the door is closed for them. And I do think it's unfortunate, and I personally am in favor of some form was in favor of some form of affirmative action. I agree that it is an imperfect solution to a very broken system. And so generally speaking, like I think affirmative action can be radically changed and all that, but I generally was in favor of some kind of race-based consideration when it comes to admissions, especially for Black and Latino students. I don't think that there are going to be as many changes as I think what people perceive, and I think the UC system is the first example of why that's not going to be the case. And so universities are going to find their way to diversify their student body no matter what. I also feel like as a Chinese American individual, as an East Asian person, I definitely hear the sort of like cries of whether it's injustice or a feeling of kind of being marginalized because maybe from the Asian community, there's students who are really doing well, and we're being disadvantaged on the other side because of affirmative action. And I can understand that feeling as well, and that regardless of what people are saying, that has happened, no question, And so this is where it is a change in the system, but universities by and large are definitely still moving towards finding ways to diversify their student body, no matter what.
You kind of like mentioned, there's both sides of it where like maybe people that are, Asian, for example, might to some extent feel like, they were at a disadvantage earlier, the other way around. So I guess one thing I'm, personally curious about, and I know a lot of people kind of discuss this, and, there might be people that are wondering as well. So when there are people from certain parts of the state or the country and they have more resources or more access to, for example, like SAT prep was a big thing, right? It still like is a huge conversation that like students that have access to, better prep and tutors and stuff are going to do better. So what would you say, does that, if race is being removed, does that kind of like impact to any extent that like now there are these groups of people that have better resources and they might just be given more opportunities? Do you think people of color or like Black people will kind of fall behind in any sense and not, struggle to catch up because they might not have access to the same resources?
So I feel like I'm going to be like end up becoming a broken record on this, but the UC system is actually what they've done by focusing on specific high schools from specific demographics is that they have sort of made adjustments in the admissions process in order to facilitate, like, say, high performing students. So I would say that like grades are still important. Like, straight A's at one high school in one neighborhood is straight A's at another high school in another neighborhood. Let's not include rigor in that conversation, but just high academic performance. But test scores vary across different high schools from different socioeconomic backgrounds. So the UC has made adjustments in the admissions rubric to make sure that students from that lower income high school, even though historically have come in with lower test scores, are going to be treated equally in the admissions process. I might say that if you're a lower income student from with a high test score and high grades, you're going to be awesome. But that the UC system has made adjustments to make sure that students from lower income context are going to do fine. So,
Thank
or
you.
are going to be considered fairly. So I
Okay.
think, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's definitely insightful. And shifting gears a little bit, I'm sure a lot of people that are listening are thinking, or maybe, planning, already done applying to college. Primarily, I think after this decision is also taking into account the fact, like, we kind of understand now, like, a little bit about the impact and what the decision actually was. And so I think students might like to know, how can they just continue to showcase their own, unique experiences and achievements, and their own personal qualities in their application to just stand out in a more competitive environment, like in general? How can they just continue to kind of work through their apps?
Yeah, I mean, I think like if race and your ethnic background is a part of your story and a part of your growth and identity, character, values, then by all means go for it. And whether it's in your personal statement or in the supplement essays, the UC system provides four, like kind of medium-sized short answer prompts. Most schools have a personal statement and at least one supplement essay. There's even an additional information box if you want to provide not a full length essay, but maybe a short discussion on your racial background. But I would not strong arm your racial background unless it is sort of key to your identity growth and values. Otherwise, it actually feels manufactured. And I do feel like admission officers are, sort of sniffing out fakeness. It's just like, frankly, I think normal people are sniffing out fakeness. So if it doesn't come off genuine, it becomes a turnoff. So I think like don't strong arm the like ethnic discussion in there. But if it's true, then go for it and find ways to express that in one of various essay prompts. Maybe not all. If there's five that make up an essay, I wouldn't talk about it five times, but once would be fine. Another thing is to make sure you talk to your high school counselor, who is also going to be, in most cases, including a counselor report on your college app. And if your racial or ethnic background has really impacted your journey, sharing that with your college counselor and giving them sort of an inside view on how that has shaped you, they may also include that in their counselor report to shed some light for admission reviewers on how your cultural background has been a part of your story. So sharing with your college counselor, also whenever, if you are a first gen student, make sure that there are, almost every school is looking for first generation students, where you're for parents who have not graduated from college. And if that box is there, make sure you check it. And any other opportunities to apply for specific scholarship programs that are targeting a certain ethnic background. So like, this is affirmative action is striking out race as a part of the admissions process, but it doesn't mean that they're striking out as far as like scholarship programs that are targeted for specific students from different ethnic backgrounds. So identifying those will also be helpful.
Thank you. And Amulya, would you like to kind of add in any questions that you personally had?
Yeah, so I was wondering if it would be helpful for students to explore alternative pathways to higher education, like community college transfer programs, special educational initiatives, or scholarships, like possibly targeting underrepresented groups.
As it relates to community college, I feel like this is the community college and scholarship aspect is maybe irrespective of the affirmative action conversation, because I also think like community college as an academic pathway is super underutilized, and I think it saves students a ton of money to go to community college, on top of the fact that it gives you a couple years to figure out what exactly you really want to do, and take classes, stay closer to home. And for some students, that's really important. I also want to note that generally speaking, community colleges across the United States have had a significant reduction in student attendance and just overall enrollment. What that means is that the forthcoming classes of transfer applicants, there's a significant reduction in transfer applicants, which means that those colleges that take transfers are seeing fewer, which also means that they're admitting a way higher percentage of students, transfer students. So like right now, let's just throw out like getting into UC Berkeley for computer science is next to near impossible, but applying in as a transfer student, actually trying to get a transfer student for computer science is still difficult, but nowhere near as difficult as a freshman high school student applying as a freshman for computer science, because colleges have funding specifically for transfer students. And if there's fewer transfer students, and for some community college systems, it's upwards of half reduction in student enrollment. Colleges are scrambling to basically try to admit as many transfer students to make sure that their budgets are met. And so, this is a little bit anecdotal, but every one of our transfer students who we work with, maybe a dozen transfer students every year, they did great this year. They did amazing. Like, we've had multiple students who got into every single UC they applied to, and so including Berkeley and LA. So I'm just trying to give you a backup option just in
pressure,
case.
Amulya. No pressure.
And you're like, Dad, if you want me to go to Berkeley, this is the way to go. So
No, for real, that's the dream.
Community college, that's the dream.
Yeah, so thank you. I think so. That was definitely very insightful, and I just kind of wanted to do like a little recap, and we try to do this sometimes at the end of the episode, just like 3 main takeaways and or like tips and advices. And I think obviously one of them that we'd probably like to tell our viewers is just like, don't panic. I feel like that should be like self-explanatory, but I think like with all of these changes that come, it's very easy to kind of stress about how this can impact you and the college admissions process, and what this means like in the bigger picture. And so I think like just not panicking, like Elton mentioned. I mean, the UC system is already not kind of following that, and they still, like, I was actually like looking into this too, that I think in 2021 they admitted their largest class with the most diversity to date. I think like out of all the applicants that were admitted, like 10% declined to state their race, but there was 43% of students admitted were actually from underrepresented groups. So I think that just goes to kind of show Elton's point that universities and higher education institutes will still find a way to make sure everyone is given as fair of a chance as possible. But Elton or Amulya, did you have anything else that you wanted to kind of add as just like a reminder to people to keep in mind as they approach this next season of college apps?
I don't have that much more to add, other than the fact that I do think it is an important marker in history right now as it relates to how the Supreme Court and how colleges are able to really focus in on race. I do feel like it may lead to how other processes in the United States are also changing, maybe for the better or for the worse. And so I think it has more cultural impact. I don't know quite yet if it will have as major of an impact on the admissions process as what other pundits might think. And I think the UC system is the example for that. So I think we can all feel better about that. But I think in the end, students, if we're with the assumption that the admissions process doesn't like change diametrically overnight, like the entire system doesn't get overturned overnight, which it won't, then students should still come through and be as honest as they can on essays, really communicate their context well. Really still the most core things, which is communicate what really makes you curious and what really makes you excited. And there's still amazing opportunity in higher education. There are thousands of four-year universities, and there are not like only 10 colleges in the United States, as what I think a lot of people might feel like, that there's only Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, Yale, that's it. Everything, there's lots of schools that have lots of resources, and there's lots of ways to be successful. And I think that's also what makes the American journey really so unique, and also why we're on a screen with I would assume 3 children of immigrants here in the United States. And there's a reason why we're doing it here in the United States and not somewhere else in the world, because there are multiple myriad of ways to be successful, and we will find that way. And that's what I would encourage students to, is that there's most certainly hope, and opportunity for you. There's no question. And this may be an adjustment in the system, but we will absolutely find a way to help everybody reach their goals. No question.
Thank you. I have a friend, and he got into UPenn and Brown and Berkeley for computer science. He was waitlisted at Harvard, and him and his mom were both like emotional about it, and they kind of like were sitting there like their hand in their heads. They were like, oh, I don't know what I did wrong. Like I got waitlisted at Harvard, like they overlooked. So I'm going to have to like send him like, the end of this episode and be like, Elton said it's, it's okay if you're not. His mom both were just like really sad. Like we were like a friend group, like going out for dinner. He didn't want to like show up to dinner that day. We were just like, dude, like it's okay. But I definitely appreciate that advice. I'm sure other students would too, that there, like he said, there's more than 10 colleges out there. Amulya, did you have anything else that you wanted to add as we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to say that it's just really important in general, even after this decision, to just represent like your passion for whatever your intended major is or whatever you're interested in going into. And like I think on college applications, everybody just has to remember to like clearly represent their like life story and like their experiences. And at the end of the day, something that I'm just trying to keep in mind is just like it doesn't really matter too much what college you go to, just more matters like the opportunities that you like take advantage of when you're at that college. So I think that's something that a lot of students should remember going into the process, and not like beat themselves up about like any colleges they don't get into, because that's like totally fine. It's like normal.
Yeah,
I agree with Amulya.
me too. That's really well said. I'm gonna have to send this to my Indian parents now. Be like, it's okay that I'm going to UC Santa Cruz. See, it's all right. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing. So that concludes this episode of our Comment podcast. We hope you enjoyed listening and gained valuable insights from our discussion. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment on this week's episode, and share it with your friends and family. If there's specific topics you want to hear about or people that you want to see featured in our podcast, feel free to let us know in the comment section below, or you can also go to www.applywithcomment.com/podcast. Our contact information will be in the description. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.